Hello, everyone. Welcome to Let's Talk It Out podcast. I'm your host, Alec Lift Shows, a.k.a. Trey Busy. It is December 6, 2019. I haven't talked to you guys since the Monday before last, right before Thanksgiving. I gave you guys a long break from the podcast because, again, it's all about family. It's all about spending time with your family. I wanted to thank Ann Moss Rogers for coming on that Monday. She was a great interview. She's been nothing but a blessing since I met her. She shared the interview on her story, and she came on. It was a really great conversation to have with Ann. So again, I want to thank her for coming on. I'm not alone tonight. I have a very, very special guest. We've been coordinating, trying to make this interview happen. You know, that's again when you're busy people, that's how it works. Sometimes things get pushed back and forth a little bit. Times change, but as long as we're here now to make it happen. So I want to welcome on former NCAA D1 basketball player, professional basketball player, and host of the Speak Your Truth podcast, Samarie Walker.
Hi, how are you?
I am blessed, and I'm grateful to be having this conversation. I enjoy having the conversation. Let's talk it out. How are things going for you today?
Everything is great, man. I'm very thankful to be on your show, Alec. I appreciate you and you using your platform to talk about mental health and bring awareness to it, and also destigmatize, just everything about mental health. So thank you. And thank you for allowing me to come on here and share my story.
You know what? And I always appreciate people that are willing to come share their stories. So again, I'm really looking forward to diving right into here. So before we go ahead and hop right into the meat and potatoes of the conversation, I want you to tell people a little bit about yourself if they're unfamiliar, and we're going to go ahead and go from there.
Awesome. So super brief. My name is Samarie Walker. I am from Dayton, Ohio. I went to the University of Connecticut, played basketball there, and then transferred to the University of Kentucky. From there, I went overseas and played in Spain, Australia, Sweden, Lithuania, Finland, and Luxembourg. So for about 4 years, it's pretty much like 8 months on, a couple weeks or a month off. It depends on what you choose to do. So my first 2 years, I was like constantly going back and forth. So I was only taking like a week or 2 weeks off between each season, which is like crazy for your body. And it really took a toll on me, but it was fun, great experience, met a lot of cool people, learned a lot of skills that prepared me to enter the job force when it was time, or the workforce when it was time for that. I went to grad school for a little bit. I've coached high school and D3 women's basketball. I've done personal training, basketball skills training. I have a clothing line. I have a podcast, Speak Your Truth, that you mentioned. I appreciate that. And yes, I do a lot. I got married a couple months ago, so a lot going on. Just moved to Chicago about a year and a half ago. So super excited about that. And yeah, that's it.
Well, that's a lot, especially the moving around part when you were playing professionally. I mean, Spain, Lithuania, Luxembourg. I mean, that's you need to go ahead and we need to get a blog going about these different countries. Maybe throwing some little pictures a little bit, just to give people a little bit, give us insight on what it's like. Because I want to travel, I want to check these places out. You were there, living there for months, right? Like, so I want to check them out.
Exactly. I was just that like I need to get. I just switched from an iPhone to an Android, so I told her I need to like download all my pictures and start like make a whole like Instagram page just for that, because I've taken so many pictures that you would think that it was like a professional photographer taking it, and just having the opportunity to travel and be able to see these things, I didn't understand what it really meant until I went to my mom's job one day, and people at her job were saying like they don't even have passports. Some of them said they never left Ohio. So it was like, wow, like I'm doing stuff that like the average person may never have the opportunity to do. So it made me like way more grateful for it, and made me appreciate the opportunity to play the sport that I loved and grew up playing, to get paid for it, to travel for free. And most importantly, like I've met lifelong friends from doing that, like people who have definitely had my back, especially through going through the different things I've went through mentally, a lot of different people. So I really appreciate them. And it's just an amazing experience to get to tell people, and also, like I said, the skills I've learned to be able to talk and connect to people. It's very amazing to be able to share these experiences with other people.
Well, like you said, I've met people too that have never left Chicago. Now, granted, Chicago is a wonderful city, but come on, man, there's a lot more to life than dipped Italian beefs and dipped Italian beefs and deep dish pizza. There's a lot more to life than that.
Because I was to Chicago after like 6 months. I was ready to go because first of all, I'm used to moving so much, but at the same time, it's like you said, like there's a whole world out here. So I saw what I needed to see. I did what I wanted to do, and it's like, all right, what's next? But I love Chicago, so it is a dope city. I love it. But yeah, I'm ready. I am ready for a new adventure. I'm not gonna lie.
Excellent. So, you mentioned earlier, I mentioned earlier, but we talked about your Speak Your Truth podcast. Can you tell me a little bit about, the conversations that you have on there, and like why did you start this platform?
For sure. So, Speak Your Truth podcast came along. I got fired from my coaching job. So I had a decision to make whether I was going to continue going to school, which means I was going to have to pay for it in full by myself now, or just quit, everything altogether. So I was going through a lot of different things mentally because I had never not had a job. So I was either always playing overseas or I had like a sales job, a cell phone, anything I could find in between like the gigs for going overseas. So, I was just thinking, like, what the hell can I do? Like, I don't have a job to do my clothing line. I'm not going to go back overseas. And at one point, that was a thought, but it was like, no way in hell. I was so overweight at the time and just did not have the mentality to go over there. So I pray a lot. And I'm a woman of faith. And that's literally, that's all I can say. That's where it came from, because I had never thought about creating a podcast. At the time, they were becoming super, super popular, and a lot of my friends and, I saw it on Instagram, just people talking about different podcasts. So it just came about, like, why not start one myself to share stories about mental health, because I was going to therapy, and that was just a way I felt like I could really help myself. And that's initially why I started doing it. And I was just going to talk about things myself, but I was like, why not open it up to other people who are or have been going through the same things? Because that is what helps us, is storytelling and sharing and being vulnerable with other people. That's why we have relationships. That's why we are just not the only human beings on earth. There's so many of us. And it's so important to be able to relate to people, to help yourself, one, feel, I don't like the word normal, but for lack of, better term, normal. And just know that there's somebody out here who is going through the same thing as you. And it not only helps you, like I said, it helps other people. And that's what's given me like the best, the most fulfillment out of doing it. And just taking my sight off of, like, how can this help me? How can I get ahead? How can I make money? To, okay, who can I get next that's going to share their story, that's going to help this young kid? Or I have a 14-year-old brother, so I'm always thinking about him. Who, like, what basketball player can I get on the show who is going to impact him and maybe help him get through some of the things he's going through as a freshman in high school? And I know I was a big time basketball player. My name rings bells. I know so many people just from playing basketball, and I met people here in Chicago who know me or have watched me play basketball, and I have no idea who they are. So it's amazing to be able to reflect on how I got there. So that's why I decided to use my platform, because I have it. There's many people who follow me on Instagram, many people who I know, and all those people know people. So my network is crazy already, and it's going to be, it's spreading even more. So just as many people I can impact and get them talking about mental health as I can. That's the goal. Destigmatize, mental health and rehumanize the athlete. That's what Speak Your Truth is all about.
Well, that's amazing that you decided to use your platform for that. I mean, yeah. So I wanted to talk about something that you said in the beginning. I mean, you said you started at first because you felt like speaking your truth was going to help you out a little bit, with dealing with what you deal with. I talked to many professionals, many professionals, and we always come up with there's 3 ways to help yourself out when you are wanting to cope with certain conditions. 3 things that you can do. Obviously, being physically active is one of them. You know, exercising, going to the gym is one of them. Another one that's real popular is becoming, going out there and becoming a part of nature, going for hikes and going for walks on the beach and that kind of stuff. It relaxes your mind, right? But the third one, I mean, this speaks exactly to what you said. The third one is finding a way to create. Creativity helps let it out, right? So again, what you're doing with your podcast is creating. You are creating content, and you're putting something in your mind, you're envisioning it, and you're letting it out, and that's really a big part of dealing with certain conditions. So I applaud you for that. A lot of people are afraid to share their stories, and the people that aren't afraid, I really do. I give them a hand every time, because you never know how hearing your story can help. How someone else hearing your story can help them out, what they're dealing with, or anything. It's like you could. I've had people reach out to me about my podcast. It's like it's so powerful. Meeting people that are like-minded. It's a great feeling.
I love it. I love it. It's definitely connected me to so many people I never would have spoken to, met, or even knew of. We never would have met if I didn't start this podcast, and vice versa if you didn't start yours. So it's always important to just be aware of what's around you. Of course, you have to be aware of yourself. That's the most important. But I will say this, once I became more aware of myself, and I did become a little more selfish and took my time back from other people, I stopped texting people back as fast and stuff like that. So just as examples, but once I became more aware of myself, that's when I became more aware of other people. So now I know that, okay, I love to give, I love to make people feel good. I love hearing people's stories and having them have the opportunity to share their story and for it to be heard by people that, never would have had the chance to hear it. But yeah, it's just so important to think outside of yourself. And creativity, it does help. I love being creative and working out. That's really what I think helped me the most. I started walking dogs for money because I needed the money, but I started losing weight doing it. So then I started running, I started lifting. It just became this like snowball effect. So now I'm eating right. I'm trying to become a full-time vegetarian. It's hard though. I love cheeseburgers too much, but other than that, though, it's been a journey with mental health.
See, you had me on everything, but once you started talking about becoming a full-time vegetarian, that's why I was like, whoa, whoa there,
Man, listen.
I am just in love with seafood. I'm in love with a nice medium well-cooked steak that's seasoned correctly. And I'm also in love with bacon. So I'm sorry to you, but I can't do it.
Listen, it's really not that bad. It's all about discipline. So I will say this: I allow myself to cheat often, probably too often. So I'm really like a half part-time vegetarian. But I would say I eat way more vegetables and like stick to more of a vegetarian diet than I do anything else. I just have my moments, especially being here in Chicago. I'm from Ohio. All we have is beans, corn, and potatoes. So being here, it's like I can't help but stop at Harold sometimes. Or, just wherever I can get something that just is so greasy and I'm going to regret it because my stomach hurts so bad. That type of food is my favorite. I'm not going to lie. Yet I want to live a long, healthy life. So discipline.
Well, yeah, this life's all about balance, so I understand. I'm just, I can't. God bless anybody that can. I can't personally, but God doesn't. Everybody has different strengths and weaknesses. That's just that's what makes mankind great. We're all the same people. I got to eat my bacon, a thick cut with a little brown sugar on it. But anyway, moving on a little bit. I want to ask you a little bit about, just going to dive in. Obviously, we touched on it a little bit, but I just want to dive into it a little bit more. I want to ask you about your personal experience, with you said you dealt with your own mental condition. Can you tell me a little bit about some of the ones you deal with
For sure. So when I was 7, I don't know what happened, like what made me that mad or sad or frustrated. But I just remember having the thought of taking my own life. So I don't know if I saw this on TV or if a friend told me or what, but I just remember going to get some aspirin um, from the bathroom and putting it in a sandwich bag and filling it up with water. So I apparently thought that was enough. But it was just like, why did I even want to do it in the first place? And I can remember like in 6th grade, the thoughts happening again. So when I got to college, I was once when I was in high school was when I really started to notice like something was wrong because I was having just like very abnormal thoughts. Just being really sad all the time, not being very confident in the way I looked or even in my basketball skills. Just having issues with fitting in and socializing. So I would tell my parents like, hey, like something is wrong. Like I'm just really sad all the time. I don't know what's going on. And they would say like it's just, normal adolescence. You're just growing up, going through puberty, blah, blah, blah. So um I would say 16, 17 was the next time I had a suicidal thought. Got to college. By my junior year, they had, well, I wouldn't say had to, but it was like almost a do or die situation at that point. I went to therapy for a little bit and I just wasn't connecting with the therapist. And at the time, I didn't really believe in mental health and you need a psychologist. And I thought that I was crazy. Basically, there was something wrong. There was something wrong with me. Um, and at that point, I was diagnosed with depression. And I, my therapist now, we haven't gone through everything we need to go through, but she believes that I may be bipolar as well, which I can kind of believe, but we're still working that out. I haven't seen her in a while, so I need to go back to her ASAP. Um, but yeah, I've even had my a couple of people who are behavioral specialists say the same thing, that they can see it. And yeah, so I sometimes it's still hard to accept, but at the same time, it's like it's the same as someone having cancer or diabetes or something like that. It's a health condition, so it's something that I work through every day, and help. Like I said, try to help other people work through it. I would the closest I've gotten to committing suicide was nearly a year ago now, right after I got fired, and I was just lost. I didn't know who I was. I had no clue of what to do next. I was so used to people telling me what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and I had no control over my own life. So being a student athlete for like 20 years, about 20 years, like I was so regimented and disciplined and expecting someone to, I don't know who I was expecting to call, but expecting somebody to call me and say, hey, this is what you need to do, and this is how you do it and why you do it, and just expecting people to like baby me still, as if I was a kid. So it was a hard process to get through, but now we're here and I'm probably like too independent now. But it's a process. I'm just glad to have gone through it and to have recognized it and to also help other people recognize it in themselves and to be continuing and strengthening the conversation of mental health.
Well, first and foremost, I would like to say I'm thankful that you are still with us. There are a lot of people that aren't, like, I mean, the numbers for suicide have gone up exponentially over the last 10, 15 years. And it's just a lot of times people are having these thoughts or these feelings. The signs are there. The signs are there. Now, just because the signs are there that don't mean that they're will to completely do it. A lot of times there's like a measuring stick that people use, a lot of professionals use for telling if where someone's at with the suicidal way. I mean, sometimes it's just thoughts. Sometimes they have a means and they have a will, and it's again, I mean, people have to pay attention to the signs. Me and Moss Rogers talked about this last week. There's cry outs for help sometimes they're subtle, sometimes they're not so subtle. So I'm very conscientious of that. Like when I see people I know or even people I don't know, like let's say I'm scrolling down, on a timeline or something like that, people are just saying things like, man, I just been feeling really empty lately, something like that. That So obviously, a lot of people won't look too deep into that. That's not too deep of a saying, but someone that gets the feeling of numbness, right? Like these things just don't matter anymore. Like, I've just been feeling empty lately, or I'm having a hard time figuring out what matters in life. That, certain things like little sayings like that. But to me, those are triggers for me because I know from conversations, from meeting with psychotherapists, or just knowing signs and symptoms of someone who's dealing with suicidal thoughts. So I've launched out, and I mean, again, I'm really grateful that you are still with us. I've been fired before from a job before. It's actually, so funny you say that. I got fired from a job I had back in August, and I've never been fired from a job before. Every job I've ever had, I always show up on time, do whatever they tell me, and go over and beyond. Right? That's how I've always been. I think I was what they call in sports world a cap casualty. They were trying to cut back on funds and money spending. I think that's why they let me go, but they came up with some BS excuse. So it was very difficult on me from a mental standpoint because, again, I've never been fired before. Every job I left, I've either, I've quit. I was like, or, I can't do this anymore. See you. Or I got another job.
Exactly.
So it's that's a very, as far as like your confidence goes and your will goes, it's a very damaging experience to lose a job like that. Because you start questioning yourself. You start questioning yourself and your and like, man, what did I do wrong? Or, why did this happen? And again, like you said, you were so used to always having what's next already planned out for you. You already have this is what I'm going to next, or this is what I have next in my life, or when I leave here, I'm doing this, right? Always having plans. That sounds a lot like I like having plans like that too, honestly. But the uncertainty is scary for people. It creates anxiety, not knowing what's next, not the unknown, the great unknown, right? A lot of people are afraid of death because it's the great quote unquote unknown. I say quote unquote unknown because, again, you're religious, you understand, you have a clear understanding of what's happening. A lot of people don't have a clear understanding of what's happening when they pass away, right? Exactly. So it's a great unknown for a lot of people. Not to go off a little too bit. Sometimes I go off the rails a little bit. Sorry about that. Let me reel it back in a little bit.
I definitely don't mind.
Let me reel it back in a little bit. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, boom. So I want you to tell me a little bit. About how things were for you growing up. Like, how are things with your family? I know you say you have a little brother that you're close to. How was it like growing up? Tell me a little bit about your family situation. Parents, were they together? That sort of stuff.
Man, I could write, produce, and direct a movie on my upbringing up until like a couple years ago. So I hope they don't mind me telling all of this, but my dad was a drug dealer before I was born, and then like a little bit after. So when I was 2, we were living here in the city, actually. I was born in Danville, Illinois. I left that part out. I don't tell anybody that. So he was on the run. They were catching up with him. So thankfully, my mom's parents, they moved to Ohio. So they were telling her, like, you guys should move here, put Samarie, and the school is here. It's real quiet, yada, 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 much different. So they were down with it. We moved there to Ohio. And it was a struggle, honestly, because my mom, she didn't have a college degree. My dad didn't have doesn't still have a college degree. And he wasn't working at the time because he was on the run, obviously. And he is also a convicted felon, so he can't get certain jobs. And being it was for drugs, there's a lot of jobs he can't do. So it was, I didn't know we were struggling like that probably until I was an adult, because they did such a great job covering it up. And it was like, it was just normal. Like, I had the absolute best parents in the world. They, have failed me at a lot of times, as all parents do. But having gone through what I've went through in this whole healing process, they did the best that they could. They did the best that they knew how to do. So it took a lot to be able to say what I'm saying right now, to forgive them, because they could have done better. I'll tell anybody, my dad is the smartest man on earth. You can tell him anything. He is a walking encyclopedia, and I don't know where he gets this knowledge from. I have no idea, but he knows everything. And my mom, she's a dreamer. She's very creative. They just didn't have it in them. But my mom, she's back in school now, so she's doing her thing. She's got a job interview, and she's been at this job for like 20 something years. And I've been telling her for so long to like quit and do something new. So it's good to see them finally moving forward. My brother, he's 14. I always, like, every year when I was a kid, I used to write on my Christmas list, I want a little brother, I want a little brother, I want a little brother. And so, yeah, he came finally. I was 13, and he couldn't have come at a much better time. It's literally my angel. That's my baby. But he's like, I'm 6 foot, 6'1" ish with my shoes on. That's my basketball height. And he's already 6'6" and wears a 15 or 16 inch shoe. So, I'm super hard on him about making it to the next level and doing what he wants to do, but making sure that he doesn't become like a statistic, in the sense that he's just a kid that can hoop. Like, he needs to also be smart, and it's sad that we have to really tell our kids that and encourage them to do that, for the simple fact that we always have to be 2 or 3 or really a million steps ahead. But also just encourage them to be more than a basketball player, more than an athlete, as LeBron says. So, but yeah, if my parents weren't, they're divorced now. I know you asked that too, which is a good thing for the both of them, but they, in my opinion, might as well still be married, because they live literally 5 minutes from each other and see each other, if not every day, every other day. So they do a great job of co-parenting, and, like, again, just making it normal for us and being the best parents that they can. And if they weren't good parents, I wouldn't be who I am today and wouldn't have the drive that I have, which just goes to show that if I can do it, that means that they could have done it. They just needed the support and everything that I had, the resources. So, but it's never too late. So, yeah.
No, it's not too late. Yeah, I mean, a lot of times I ask people how was it like growing up sometimes, and they get to talking. I mean, they sometimes the unhealthy background or the unhealthy story from their life, growing up, sometimes it affects their mental status today. They have a lot of anxiety. They have a little bit of PTSD from seeing arguments, stuff like that. Grant, you said your parents, they did split. They had divorced. I didn't ask that, but you shared it with me, so I just asked how it was like growing up. So don't put that on me that you said that. If they get mad for you saying it, you said that on your own.
No.
Just want to throw that out there.
I know. I'm gonna tell them it was your fault, but. Like, so it's in the magazine. All this stuff is already pretty much out there. I don't think everybody knows they're divorced, but I mean, at this point, it don't even really matter. It is what it is. So, but yeah, like I will say I'm still in the process of healing from my upbringing, because they are old school Black parents. My dad is from the South. His whole family is from the South. And my mom's mom, I honestly try not to introduce people to her, because I don't know what's going to come out of her mouth or how she's going to embarrass me next. I love that woman to death. She is amazing. But just some of the stuff that she says, it's like you just shouldn't say at all, or definitely shouldn't say to your grandchildren. Some of their ideas of how to discipline, just the constant yelling. And always getting cussed out, instead of like sometimes like, hey, it's okay. I know you did this because, or help me understand why you did it. It was never a conversation. It was always a cussing out or just getting yelled at. I never really got whoopings. I will say that, thankfully. So yeah, and then you throw basketball into it, constantly being yelled at and cussed out from the time I was 7 until a year or two ago when I finally stopped playing. I mean, that's what I'm used to, and it is kind of I'm just used to a certain type of interaction with some people. Like I said, I'm used to being told what to do, and it's been a process building my confidence and like really using the skills that I have in marketing, the skills that I have, and learned from playing basketball and being a student athlete. So I just try to utilize every experience that I have. And like I said, I'm in the process of healing, and it took me going to therapy to understand like everything that I'm saying and to be able to say it. Because if we had this conversation probably like 2 or 3 months ago, I would have never spoken as highly of my parents. Trust me. So it's a process.
Well, I'm glad things didn't get bloody on the Let's Talk It Out podcast. I don't want to be the guy to rip off Band-Aids, but I mean, I have people sign waivers. No, I'm kidding. But seriously though, you could talk about whatever you want to talk about, whatever you're comfortable talking about on his show. I encourage people to do that. There's no filter needed. If there's just something that you don't really feel comfortable talking about, you could just be like, you could give me the little, what they say, the political answers. Just like beat around the bush a little bit, I'll catch the hint. I'm good at catching the hints. I'm like, okay, well, moving on. Right, so I understand though. Sometimes sometimes healing takes longer for certain things, right? Like, I mean, it could take months for some things years, some things could take a lifetime. It all depends on the person and where they're at strength wise mentally. So I get it. Me and my father, we have a great relationship now. It wasn't always like that. Him and my mom didn't have, marriage wasn't the best. Now it was because neither one of them were a bad person, but if you look at it as from the aspect of puzzle pieces, they didn't fit, right? A lot of times certain pieces don't fit, and personalities don't fit, idealisms don't fit. A marriage is literally a evolving puzzle as life goes on, right? So obviously your marriage, you'll know when you are married to someone, you guys have to have like an agreement on a lot of things that you used to just like making decisions yourself. Like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go ahead and do this. This is what I'm about to do, and then it's like, no, you got to consult with your significant other. You gotta do this.
Like, I can't do nothing without having to ask first, and it's almost like a parent and child sometimes. Like, can I do this? Can I do that? Are you okay with this? And like you said, it's ever evolving, and that's the beautiful thing about it. And like every day, I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to be with her and just get to know her. Sometimes I look at her and I'm like, man, I don't even really know this person. But that's the beautiful thing about it. We have the rest of our lives to get to know each other. I know she's trustworthy and loyal, and she loves me, and she got my back. That's all I really need to know right now. More than that, let me not to say that's all you need to know, but that's enough. And it is beautiful to just every day grow and learn and take it like that as a learning situation or a teaching moment, not like I got to make this sacrifice or I have to do this again for her, or here she is again wanting stuff this way. Like, no, I have to adapt to that because she's had to adapt to so much for me. So it is frustrating at times, obviously, because you're trying to merge, these two, like you said, ideologies and ways of life together. But it's amazing. I love it. It's been a very rewarding experience. I was always scared to get married. I never ever in my life wanted to get married, but this is like the best out of everything I've done in my life, the absolute best experience that I've had, and the most rewarding, honestly, the best friendship, all of that.
Okay, you don't got to hit me with the little Hallmark stuff at the end. No, I'm kidding.
I'm just saying. It's only been 2 months, though. We're gonna hold our breath for 2 months.
I was just yeah. I mean, not to go into its marriage. That's not what we were talking about initially. But yeah, I mean, as long as you're willing to put in the work and you're willing to put pride to the side, that's a huge part of it. Putting pride to the side, and understanding that again, it's not sacrifice, but it's doing what's necessary, right? So that's a huge part. A lot of people, again, the divorce rate is pretty high, especially. I mean, I've known people. I'm about to turn 30 next year. I know people that got married twice already. They're not 30 yet. I mean, it's kind of weird concept to think about. I'm gonna spend the rest of my life with you, and I'm writing it down on a piece of paper, and I'm taking it before God, and then like less than 5-6 years later, you're divorced. That's kind of strange, but yeah, I mean, people just they get into it, but they don't know what they're getting themselves into. That's what I think the issue is with a lot of those divorces. I'm not saying our parents, it's a different generation, but for this generation, I think it's because a lot of people don't realize what they're getting themselves into. The whole merging of ideology thing. It's like these people are you guys grew up in different places, different households, different ideas of how to do certain things, right? So you okay, let's move together and live together for the rest of our lives, you know. So you gotta be prepared for that. So I want the transition.
For real, my bad. My bad. Me and my wife were roommates we were supposed to be roommates, so we ended up being roommates for a whole year. Shit, longer than that, probably a year and a half before we tied the knot. So yeah, it was crazy story. But anyway, let's transition.
Like, let's moving right along, right?
Yeah. No. We'll pass that. This will be like part 2 of our interview.
Okay. So I want to ask you about obviously it was a huge thing going on. This is really moving on. Like, this is the ultimate transition, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a huge thing going on with like the whole student athletes and not receiving payment for the likeness from the NCAA. They had those games and these kids they're traveling and they're playing basketball and but they're making so much money. These universities are making so much money from these kids, man. Like, look, like someone like Zion Williamson, Duke made a bag from him. A bag.
A few.
They made a bag from a few bags. You're right, a few bags. It was to the point where I think they said for the tournament, they had ESPN or somebody, I forgot which sports agency, they hired extra cameramen just to follow him around more, right? Just to get better, more. That's crazy, right? Isn't that crazy to think about? So they're doing all this, but guess how much he got paid for it?
Well, I'll say this. Publicly, nothing. Under the table, a whole hell of a lot. We will never know how much paid. So
listen. We know the under table money coming, right? Look, I know this university wants you, but we're gonna take care of your mom's mortgage. We're gonna get you a Challenger, and we're gonna pay for your housing.
What? So yeah, but publicly, you're totally correct. From the NCAA, from Nike, from the university, these athletes get nothing. And it's even crazier now with the power of social media, because now they can really, really market and advertise their team just from their star player. So didn't nobody really care about RJ Barrett like that, or the other Cam Reddish. Yeah, they were supposed to be like the big 3, but who was the main focus on? So it's like, you don't give this boy that we know of anything. Like you said, his name, his likeness, what was he, number 1? I'm sure they weren't really selling Duke number 1 jerseys like that until he got there. So it's just, it's sad and it's crazy. Even the thing that's going on right now at Memphis, I think his name is James, he's suspended for 12, or was suspended for 12 games because Penny Hardaway loaned his mom like $11,500 for something, and but Penny Hardaway isn't suspended at all. So it's like, I don't get why, especially black boys, black men, why they continue to sell their bodies to the NCAA instead of going overseas and making money. Because let's say you get hurt while you're playing in the NCAA, something that you can't recover from. Now what are you going to do? Now you got to go to school for all 4 years. You can't go pro. So then what? So it's like, to me, the NCAA is almost a setup in a sense. I would just go straight overseas, or they need to do something to really appeal that rule where you have to go to college first, because if they're good enough to come out of high school, why not? Or really use that opportunity instead of making them go to school for 1 year and waste it when somebody else could use that scholarship who actually may want to go to school or stay longer than a year to develop their game. Really use the opportunity to develop the G League. Like, it's literally as simple as that. So all the boys that are good enough, men that are good enough to go from high school to pro, if they're not NBA ready quite yet, just send them to the D League, G League, whatever they call it now. So yeah, there's all sorts of, in my very humble opinion, solutions to the problem. Yet are we going to fix it? Then you got Alabama football, like they, I'm sure, make billions and billions for Nike and for the NCAA and for these TV networks. Yet, do any of those young men receive any money for it? So, and football, you don't even get to see their faces for real. You don't even know who you're cheering for. So it's a lot of different moving pieces to that conversation.
It's so funny that you said that about not funny like how funny, but like ironic. You bring up how certain players can get injuries, and it's like in college, and it's like okay, they're it. That's it for them. See you, right? Like, so I actually had an interaction a couple of weeks ago with some listeners might remember the name, the guy Kevin Ware that played for Louisville in the tournament a few years ago. That was one of the most gruesome leg injuries I've ever seen, like ever in my life on sports related. I mean, he turned to run a certain way and his leg just snapped in half. And it was very, very gruesome. And it's like, I was talking to him, we had an interaction on Twitter. I forgot how it happened. But I told him, man, I'm like, man, I'm happy for you that you had the mental toughness to come back from that. And, I think he's playing basketball overseas somewhere now. And he said, man, I appreciate you, bro, for real. It's like, but it's like some people have injuries like that, and it's like they don't come back from it, right? They don't ever make it to the league. They are not able to play the sport ever again on a higher level. And what do they have to show for it? Okay, here's a picture of you with the jersey on, and boom, that's it. They didn't, like you said, Samarie, they don't get paid, quote unquote, paid from the NCAA. Now we know damn well Alabama getting paid. Them players getting paid handsomely under the table.
For real.
Handsomely.
For real. Man, it was a part of my process as well, like letting go of the fact that like I'm not going to receive the recognition that either I thought I should have or that maybe I should have. And then I even think about my teammates who were essentially bench players who never really got to see the floor. And they left their homes to come to UConn or to Kentucky to just cheer. Like, they ain't try out for the cheerleading team. They came to play basketball. And it's like, where are some of them at now? And not like our coach, former coach picks and chooses when he wants to like reach out to players and have relationships with them or invite us back. So it's just like, what did I really spend these 4 years doing? I have absolutely no relation with UConn, which I really didn't expect to, because he's a whole asshole. So that's not surprising. It's like, why did I, again, sell my body, my talent, my skills, my potential for y'all to just dismiss me as if I wasn't me, as if my name isn't what my name is, as if I didn't have the talent that I had, the skills, like as if y'all weren't beating down my fucking door and, ringing my parents' phones off the hook to get in touch with me, to get me to come to y'all school. And now I'm just a nobody, especially because I made a decision to leave UConn. Now, in the healing process, I've learned that it was also my fault, essentially, because I didn't work hard to do anything to keep my name alive. So even if I had stepped away from the game right after college, then I could have still done something if I had have just, did my part to maximize my potential. So there's a lot of ways I can look at it. On the flip side of that, UK's coach, I don't know what he does now, but he was horrible at developing talent. There was no reason why our team shouldn't have won more games and more championships, have been able to hang more banners. And if you look at it, how many UK players are in the WNBA or even overseas? So it's just, it's we're always frowned upon, and it's from any level, whether it's high school, college, or pro, but the coaches never get penalized. So if players request a trade in the NBA, for example, then they're a horrible player, a horrible teammate, they're not loyal, blah, blah, blah. But if a coach gets offered a bigger contract to go to another team to coach, then it's okay. Like, congrats to him to sign a bigger contract to go coach a different team in the middle of the season. But it's not okay for the player to do that. So it's always us who gets just basically we're the bad guys.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Coaches leave and then it's like whatever, but like again, like players try to do what they want to do. It's it's and one thing I can say about the NBA is these players are starting to take power back into their own hands, man. Like the whole, all right, you know what, we're gonna go play here together. You know, the
Exactly.
whole how Kawhi handled the whole thing with the Clippers with Paul George. He was like, hey, you guys want me to come play for y'all? You gotta get PG, right? So they traded for PG that same night. Kawhi signed with him.
Exactly.
So
You
that's
gotta know your worth. And that's one thing that I regret is I didn't understand that back then. And that's why I never lived up to my potential because I didn't even know I didn't know I had it or really understood. So in my head, I'm gonna always be the greatest female basketball player. She just never came about. So it's still in there though. If I drop a few more pounds and get a trainer, then maybe I'll make a comeback. Um but yeah, it's a process. But now it's just so important to me to use my platform or just use my experience and knowledge to share it with young people so that they don't make the same mistakes that I made. And especially, like I said, my brother, because he wants to go to Duke so bad. And just trying to teach him and help him from my experiences and what I've learned, just reminding my parents of what's important and helping them do what's best for him in terms of where he goes to high school and helping him prepare because even though he's only a freshman, like these 4 years are going to go by so fast and it becomes a business. If you're an elite player, it becomes a business once you're in like seventh or eighth grade. So, the mental health side of that, we spoke about a little bit before the interview with performance anxiety and stuff. Like, there are a lot of pressure on kids that we put on them or coaches put on them, the parents, and we don't think like this ain't about us at the end of the day. And it's just a game. This kid might grow up and not even play this sport anymore. And it's so important to remind them that their worth is not about the sport that they play or even their grades or just whatever it is. Like their worth comes from who they are as a person. And my worth was so tied up in being a basketball player, which was why like I suffered from depression and stuff because if I had a bad game or if I wasn't in the newspaper or just whatever, then I wasn't good. I wasn't a good person, which that has something to do with who I am. So it's important to start this conversation and start it with the really really young kids because that's where it starts. It's hard to change a person. You can't what is it? You can't teach a dog. Can't teach an old dog new tricks.
old
Yeah,
dog, new tricks. Yep. Can't
yeah,
teach the
yeah.
old dog new tricks.
To hit them young. So that's my goal is to get into the public schools here, especially the inner city schools, and teach them about mental health, wellness, nutrition. There's food deserts here in the city. I had no idea what that was until I got here. Really, really saw it on the south side when I was living down there for a little bit, and it's just really sad, really, really sad to see the people on the streets talking to themselves. So and drinking alcohol at like 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. That shit's crazy. And that's all these young black kids see all day, every day, abandoned houses, people hanging out on the block on the corner store. So that's another reason why I started the podcast and gave it more meaning because it's not just about athletes or, I want to bring entertainers on the show because that's who we look up to and idolize. But it's also about giving back. Like, what else can I do with this podcast? So it's really important to get to the young people and teach them.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Yeah, just the whole, and it's again, I'm grateful that nowadays, 2019, more and more athletes are coming out and speaking about mental health. They're being more open and honest about it. And they're talking about talking about and stuff like I'm thinking to like Chicago Bears player, tight end Trey Burton. He dealt with really bad anxiety. They actually said that he missed the playoff game in January because his anxiety was going off. It was so bad that he was about to play his former team, the Eagles, that he sat out the game because of anxiety issues.
I definitely understand that, man.
Yeah, people don't realize. I mean, when your anxiety gets to the point where you can't control it. And again, certain things you're supposed to be anxious about, right? I mean, you're supposed to be anxious about starting a new job. You're supposed to be anxious about moving somewhere. You're supposed to be anxious about I don't know, meeting someone's parents for the first time. That's normal. That's normal feeling. Now, when it goes overboard, when you start having anxiety towards things that aren't something like that, like, you know, like things like, for me, I mean, I had really bad anxiety. I talk about it all the time, where I couldn't even drive on the expressway, right? Like, I would literally take side streets everywhere I wanted to go. Everywhere I had to be, I'd take side streets. I used to leave earlier than I had to get places because I knew it would take a lot longer time, because I'm not hopping on the expressway. There's nothing, I'm not doing it, right?
Wow.
But
that's
yeah,
wild.
and again, like, it sounds silly, but to me, that was really my life. Like, I would literally be like, man, I can't do it. I can't do it. Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just gonna say, like, before I learned how to overcome it, it really meant like the world was ending to me when I was on the expressway. And it's so crazy. You ask people what you try to ask people what caused their anxiety, just hearing different things and how they talk about how they describe it. It sounds silly to you, but like, from that person, it's like it's crushing to them. Like, it's a crushing anxiety.
Yes, I totally agree. And that's when I first moved here. At first, I was really, really scared, and I was like I'm in Chicago, I got to get with it. So, sometimes you just have to put yourself out there, and sometimes, like you said, like you're paralyzed, so you can't do it. And if that's really in your mind, like, that's a real thing, and people don't understand that. I just saw, actually, on TV, there was a woman who was afraid to just cross the street in New York City, and that's like a real thing, because it's crazy crossing the street in cities, especially New York, especially here. People get hit all the time. I can understand why you're, scared to drive on the highway. And then, like, I know for myself, a personal experience was just, playing basketball. When I was at UConn, I was so anxious and nervous about what the girls were saying, what my, coaches were saying, what even the managers and stuff, the fans, that I literally could not shoot. Like, I remember my assistant coach had to do like a one-on-one workout with me. And she was like, we started doing this drill, and like, I was just airballing back to back to back. It was horrible. So she said, let's move in. Let's just do form shooting. So I was airballing again, like not even close to the rim. It was so bad, so embarrassing. And then, like, the final straw was we did layups. I couldn't even do that. And then I shot one, like, just right over the whole backboard. And nobody knew what the hell was wrong with me. I just thought that it's crazy, because obviously I didn't suck. Like, I would have not been in UConn's gym in a UConn uniform if I was a bad basketball player. So it amazes me also, and I'm very thankful how progressive we've been with mental health, because shortly after that, about 2 or 3 years after that, was when my coach brought to my attention, like, it may be mental health. It's not obviously something physical. So, and then you look to now where we have sports psychologists and things like that. They're mandatory in the NBA now. So it's amazing how far we've come.
That it is amazing where we're at. I mean, there's a special that I was watching on NBC Sports about mental health, and it had like a few Chicago athletes on there, hockey player, White Sox player. And yeah, just hearing them talk about it, man, it's so crazy that we watch it. I mean, even UConn, obviously, it's a huge stadium. Just watching players, run up and down on court, playing basketball. It looks routine to us. Meanwhile, there's thousands and thousands of people watching you guys play the sport. Like, it's in the stands. Everybody's looking at you, like, right? So a lot of people get anxiety from stage fright. Here you guys are,
exactly.
On a court, and it's thousands, if not millions of people, depending on what games they are or what time of the year they are, looking at you. It's crazy, man. Like, it's a crazy thing to think about.
It's amazing. I sometimes I used to force myself not to think about it, and it honestly caused me to have social anxiety too. Like, when I'm in public spaces, even still, sometimes I'm constantly worried about what people are thinking and saying, because at one point in time, I always had to look a certain way. My body had to be in a certain shape. My hair everything just had to be perfect. And like you said, having so many people watching you, you're constantly being judged, whether it's good or bad. Like, too much good judgment can be bad too. So it's like, it was a very
and still is sometimes, like I said, a very, very hard thing to deal with, because you're always being critiqued and you're always being watched. Like, we couldn't even go out and party and have fun for real, because we had to worry about, somebody taking a picture, or, were we even supposed to be out that night because we might have had an early practice or game or something that next day. So it's we don't really, even as athletes, we don't think about that stuff until it may be brought to our attention, or we experience somebody else going through it. It is what it is, and I'm like I keep saying, like, I'm just glad that we're talking about it now, because this is the only thing that I can do to help my situation, is to, one, heal and recover, and then to share my story with other people so that they will be comfortable, one, going through the healing process themselves, and then sharing their story so that we just continue it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Samarie, I want to ask you if there's any last words of advice or any last remarks you want to leave the audience with before we get out of here today.
I will say that if you're ever feeling like you don't have a reason to stay, take that time to find the reason, and just stay, because there were times where, like you said earlier, just feeling so empty, as if there was like absolutely nothing in me. Actually, right before our interview, I had a little breakdown, because we're going through a situation with transferring jobs and money and stuff like that. And I just felt like, the great thing is, though, my thought process has changed. So usually in that situation, I would have a suicidal thoughts, so like, why am I even here? Why am I trying? It's never going to work. To now, where today I prayed and I was just being extremely as positive as I can, just telling myself, like, this is just a moment. It's going to be okay. It's always okay. And instead of thinking about the problem and focusing on that, focusing on the solution. So that's a lot of where our problems come from, is or how they deepen, is focusing on the problem. So always find a reason and always focus on the solution. And please find a reason to always stay. I want to say to you, Alec, aka Trey Busy, thank you for the opportunity. And I'm really excited about us meeting and us doing what we can to help each other out in the community.
Thank you for accepting the opportunity, and thank you. That was very well said. Yeah, I mean, you're welcome back anytime. I'm looking forward to working with you off the air to see what we can to make things happen. If you guys are listening, first-time listeners, I encourage you to subscribe to Let's Talk It Out podcast. It's available on every platform that you listen to podcasts on. If you are already subscribed, I really, really appreciate you for listening to this podcast. I really do so much. So until next time, I look forward to talking to you guys in the future.